Good morning. Good morning. Happy Mother's Day. Before I say the prayer for the speaker, I'm going to ask the mothers to stand up so you can go ahead and clap for them. Give them a round of applause. Thank you. Please bow with me as I pray for the speaker. Dear Lord, we thank you for Gary's leadership. I pray that Gary's words today come from you, and that these words are used to honor and glorify you. Let us not forget what we hear today, but allow us to build on it. In Jesus' name, amen.
Amen. Thank you. So, good morning again, church. And as everyone has said, Happy Mother's Day. If y'all didn't know, it is Mother's Day. It's the Lord's Day. Mothers are included, right? Y'all are excited to be here today, I can tell. We're going to have a time. So, with it being Mother's Day, I'm very sensitive about this subject of Mother's Day. Typically within our tradition, the preacher might not necessarily do a Mother's Day sermon or lesson. Sometimes they did when I was growing up, sometimes they did, but it wasn't mandatory. Now, as a lot of you know, I retired a few months ago from being a chaplain in the Air Force. And our chapels oftentimes, boy, they have traditions. And you best not break those traditions. And Mother's Day was one of those. And on Mother's Day, they would do a number of different things, such as have all the mothers stand like we just did, and then have like the mother with the most children, the mother to stand, and the mother with who had the oldest child, or possibly a mother who had great grandchildren, and all like that. And they didn't want you breaking those traditions. Well, I was preaching in the chapel, Davis-Monthan Air Force Base in Tucson, Arizona. And the first Mother's Day I was there, we had all the mothers stand. Well, that didn't make some people happy because they said, well, you know, what about the mothers to be? I said, what do you mean? Well, the ones who are young. I said, what do you mean? Well, the children, the female children. I said, so we have them stand too? So next year, I had all the mothers and the mothers to be stand. Okay. Thought I was good. Next year, it was not good in that we had the mothers to be, but also some mothers have maybe left the home, and so the dad is having to fill both positions. So we need to start having the dads who are acting as mothers to stand as well. And also when we did these things, we would always have people walk around and give them a rose. That's great. Maybe I had this thing finally licked. The next year, well, there are some people who identify as mothers, even though they aren't mothers, but maybe they've been a mother to someone at some point. I said, look, I'm done with Mother's Day. In fact, you can ask Rhonda. It got to a point, I hated Mother's Day. Woo, I know. That's like I'm going straight to hell and fry like a Jimmy Dean sausage because I hate Mother's Day. I was so tired of everybody being some kind of a mother. So, next year, I said, I'm done. And I had a Mother's Day lesson, but I didn't have anybody stand for anything. I didn't call out any mothers. I simply said, if you think you are somehow a mother, we got a rose back in the back for you. When you leave today, please take a rose, because I ain't giving you one. Y'all might say, well, you just ugly, ain't you? I was tired. I was tired of Mother's Day. I was finally... After that, I finally just had a guest preacher come in on Mother's Day because I said, I'm done. I'm done. But I am sensitive to this day. I do a lot of reading. I do a lot of reading in preparation for a lesson. I have a lot of books. I read periodicals. I get stuff in the mail, magazines and all. I get different things come in and have different stories and all. And what I have also noticed is that oftentimes it's a very sad day when Mother's Day comes around. Maybe a person, a lady who who can't have children. Or maybe there's been miscarriages. Or maybe, it goes on and on. And so when Mother's Day comes around, what I also saw was that sometimes people won't attend worship on Mother's Day because of the pain and hurt that's there. Well, that's sad. That is very sad. Because this is a place of fellowship. This is a place of healing. And in no way would myself or anyone here want to hurt anyone or bring back painful memories like that. But I would encourage those that do maybe have some memories like that, or maybe some that didn't have the best mother growing up, or maybe their mother left them, whatever it might be, to think about what God's image of a mother is, to think about how a mother should be. You have to kind of change, I guess, your way of thinking in regards to mothers. We are going to talk about it a little bit today, though. Because the Bible does mention mothers, right? It does. And great examples of mothers that we have are Scripture, 2 Timothy 1:5. I am reminded of your sincere faith. This is Paul talking here. Timothy, which first lived in your grandmother Lois and in your mother Eunice, and I am persuaded now lives in you also. Apparently, Timothy got something good from his mama, right? She taught him the Bible. Maybe she taught him about church, right? We have mamas who do that. Yes, we do. And I can remember good mamas, including mine, who taught Bible classes and all through the years. And how they raised us up and taught us the stories of Abraham and Isaac and Noah and all of these great, wonderful things. Good mamas who also taught us, who not only taught us those stories, but also would take us out back to the church building. We weren't acting right. And yes, that has happened to me. A lot of different occasions. Probably the reason I decided to become a preacher. In fact, the elders went to my mom because she was killing all the bushes around the outside of the church building from taking switches off of them. I'm just kidding. I hope my mom is not watching this today. But good mamas who taught us right from wrong, and probably something like what we're looking at here with Timothy. And his grandmother Lois and his mother Eunice. Taught him the ways that were right, the ways he should go. Very close to his mother, from what we can tell. That mentions his father, which is kind of sad. Mentions his mother. How close was he to his mother? You know, sometimes people think a guy can be too close to his mama. Too close. They sometimes say they have a mother complex, or maybe they're a mama's boy. Boy, didn't you love being called a mama's boy, guys? When you're growing up, you're a mama's boy. You know, that don't bother me anymore. You can call me a mama's boy, because in a lot of ways I am. There's a fellow named James. He was said there was never a more devoted son. His relationship to his mother was very close. It lasted a lifetime. What impressed James most was his mother's unfailing confidence in him. It was the kind of confidence that only a mother could have. Even on his deathbed, James' agony could only be overcome by writing to his mother. It's President James Garfield. Another fella, he was eternally 7 years old. Throughout his life, his friends warned those about to meet him that he was only 7 years old. He was a mama's boy. Whenever he wrote his mother, he began with these words, which we find kind of strange. Says, "Darling, beloved little motherling." She had a compulsion for cleanliness, and so did he. Back and forth. Ted and his mother were one and the same. President Theodore Roosevelt. Bill's mother put it this way. She said, "I find that Willie needs constant watching and correcting. It requires great caution and firmness, but I do not believe we can love our children too much." And you can imagine how Bill turned out, President William Howard Taft. There was another one, was another unashamed mama's boy, physically and emotionally, clinging to his mama even into adulthood. There was only warmth between the two, and Woody often said that he came to love the best in womanhood through his attachment to his mother, President Woodrow Wilson. Frank wouldn't dare go to school without his mama. He wouldn't go to school without his mama. And at this, he was attending Harvard University and still wouldn't go to school without his mama. His mother had an extraordinary drive for perfection, and she focused it all on him. For nearly 60 years, she tried to organize her son's life in every minute detail, and he loved every minute of it. President Franklin Delano Roosevelt. Harry's mother mothered him quite a bit. She sat up with him countless times when he needed her. Is it any wonder that Harry returned the favor continually throughout his life? His mother lived to be 94, right up to the last. There was Harry, conducting business matters from his mother's bedside. He was definitely a mama's boy. President Harry S. Truman. And the last one, what about David? David was a big boy. He was a big guy in the army. He never stopped writing his mama, and all through his life, he subconsciously imitated his mama. Her laugh, her expressions, and her pleasant smile. President Dwight David Eisenhower. Yeah, these were all mama's boys. Times of crises, it was always their mother who came to mind. So, man, can we be too close to our mamas? Some say you can, but others say no. But if you are too close to your mother, you might turn out to be like one of these ex-presidents. Each of these men were not afraid to be called a mama's boy, so I guess we'd have to say, in a sense, we can never be too close to our mothers, and of course this certainly holds true for godly mothers. Once again, Paul said to Timothy, I am reminded of your sincere faith, which lived in your mother Eunice, your grandmother Eunice, and now lives in you, or your mother Eunice, his grandmother Lois. I think we can all agree we owe our mamas a great deal. Some of us probably a greater deal than others for having to put up with some of us, right? Have you ever had to go back and apologize to your mama for the way you acted growing up? Or when your kids are acting up, you think, uh-oh, is God getting even with me? Did I do something wrong growing up? Is this why God sent me this child? And you know I'm being facetious there. We love our children. And as much as my children think I was perfect growing up, I'm confessing to them today I was not. And I did some crazy stuff. And my mom loved me anyways. Always loved me anyway. She once told me, I'm in my 50s, and she told me not long ago, she said, I know the stuff you did that you don't know I know. I said, Mama, I don't want to know what you know that I don't know that you know. I said, can we drop it? I don't want to know. I still think I got away with something. So I want us to consider today two thoughts about our mothers. I think we should appreciate and also imitate our mothers. First one, appreciation. 1 Thessalonians 5:18. Give thanks in all circumstances, for this is God's will for you in Christ Jesus. Give thanks in everything. Give thanks. We should be giving thanks for our mamas. The attitude of gratitude should be a big part of our lives. Gratitude to God, gratitude to others, and certainly to our mothers. Ephesians 6:2. Honor your father and mother. The word honor most certainly it must certainly include appreciation and praise. So we should be honoring our mothers. Not just today, but every day, right? Every day. We need to express appreciation to our mothers. We need to appreciate our mothers for giving birth to us. Genesis 3:16, to the woman God said, I will greatly increase your pains in childbearing. With pain you will give birth to children. With pain. We men know little about this other than perhaps some of us have viewed childbirth. I have viewed childbirth with my wife. That's the sweetest woman you'll ever meet. But on those days, her head spun all the way around. And I was afraid of her. There's no such thing, I believe, as painless childbirth. Never been there as far as giving birth. However, I have experienced it and I've watched it. So let's talk a little bit about a lady in the Bible. I love this story. Who cannot love the story of Hannah and Samuel? 1 Samuel 1 through 17. I didn't put it on the slides today. You can turn there if you'd like. But a certain man from Ramathane, I'm not going to read all these begats here, but in verse 2 it says he had 2 wives. One was called Hannah and the other Peninnah. Peninnah had children, but Hannah had none. Year after year, this man went up from his town to worship and sacrifice the Lord Almighty at Shiloh, where Hophni and Phinehas, the 2 sons of Eli, were priests of the Lord. Whenever the day came to for Elkanah to sacrifice, he would give portions of the meat to his wife Peninnah and to all her sons and daughters. But to Hannah, he gave a double portion because he loved her. And the Lord had closed her womb. Because the Lord had closed Hannah's womb, her rival kept provoking her in order to irritate her. This went on year after year. Whenever Hannah went up to the house of the Lord, her rival provoked her till she wept and would not eat. Her husband Elkanah would say to her, "Hannah, why are you weeping? Why don't you eat? Why are you downhearted? Don't I mean more to you than 10 sons?" Now, guys, if there's a lesson in what not to say, that last one that he just said, don't say that one. The others are fine. Why are you weeping? Why don't you eat? Why are you downhearted? Talk to her. But don't say, don't I mean more to you than 10 sons? You're doing good, Elkanah. Until now. Write a book one day of dumb sayings in the Bible, usually coming from men saying something like this. Don't I mean more to you than 10 sons? So once, when they had finished eating, verse 9, and drinking in Shiloh, Hannah stood up. Now Eli the priest was sitting on his chair by the doorpost of the Lord's house. In her deep anguish, Hannah prayed to the Lord, weeping bitterly. And she made a vow, saying, Lord Almighty, if you only look on your servant's misery and remember me, and not forget your servant, but give her a son, and I'll give him to the Lord for all the days of his life, and no razor will ever be used on his head. She kept on praying to the Lord. Eli observed her mouth. Hannah was praying in her heart, and her lips were moving, but her voice was not heard. See, this just perfect passage here to teach you that you don't necessarily have to pray out loud to pray to God, right? Eli thought she was drunk. And he said to her, how long are you going to stay drunk? Put away your wine. And there's a preacher saying an inappropriate thing to her, thinking she was drunk without knowing the whole story. Not so, my Lord, Hannah replied. I'm a woman who's deeply troubled. I have not been drinking wine or beer. I was pouring out my soul to the Lord. Do not take your servant for a wicked woman. I have been praying here out of my great anguish and grief. Eli answered, go in peace. May the God of Israel grant you what you have asked of him. We're going to come back to this story here in just a few minutes. Second thing is we should appreciate our mothers for all the care they gave us. Proverbs 31:27, she watches over the affairs of her household and does not eat the bread of idleness. Many mothers have devoted their entire lives to their home and raising their children. There's an old saying, a lot of us, I know older ones of us have heard the saying, man works from sun to sun, but woman's work is never done. So true in many homes. I think mothers may well be the hardest working people in the world. Many mothers work a full-time job outside the home and come home to continue to work. They come home, prepare the evening meal, do dishes, do laundry, do all these things that mamas do, right? I witnessed it growing up. I witness it now. Sometimes we guys have to tell our wives, who are also most of them mothers, hey, sit down and relax. It's okay. I read the most stressed out people in the world are working mothers, and it is no wonder. Do we realize how much work our mothers have done throughout the years? All the things that they've done in our homes, all the care that they've given. And you know what? It's not only the care they've given to their own children, but to other children, others that have been brought into the home. Just being a mom, doing what moms do. Mother said to her son one day who was fussing about having to eat. He didn't like what she had. She says, 20 years from now, you'll be telling some girl what a great cook your mama was. Now hush up and eat your dinner. Yeah. We were younger. We didn't like certain things maybe that our moms cooked, but now many of us rave about her cooking. Just the memories this time of the year that bring about growing up and your moms. The special care that they always gave us. I remember, my mom would stay on me about cleaning my room. Yeah. Why is it kids always have the worst rooms? But she would stay on me about cleaning my room. And then finally, she couldn't stand it any longer. This is after she'd already closed the door to where she didn't have to look in there. But finally, she'd go in there and clean it up herself. I figure I won those battles. But laundry always done, meals prepared, all of these things that you don't even really realize when you're growing up. You get older and you realize those things did not miraculously happen, but it was the love of a good mama taking care of her family, taking care of her children. And all that love and even the discipline that I mentioned earlier, even the discipline, those spankings I got, I deserved them all and more. Because my mama loved me. And she forgave me still for my bad behavior. So let's continue with our story here in 1 Samuel. This is from 1 Samuel 1, 20 to 28. Starting at verse 20. So in the course of time, Hannah became pregnant and gave birth to a son. She named him Samuel, saying, because I asked the Lord for him. She gave birth. And when her husband Elkanah went up with all his family to offer the annual sacrifice to the Lord to fulfill his vow, Hannah did not go. She said to her husband, after the boy is weaned, I'll take him and present him before the Lord, and he will live there always. After the boy is weaned, I ain't taking him now. Now, remember, Hannah said, Lord, if you give me a son, I'll give him back to you. Well, Elkanah's going there. She said, wait, after he's weaned. Now, we don't know what age that was, but I wouldn't doubt she held on to that for a long time. So verse 23, do what seems best to you, her husband Elkanah told her. Stay here until you have weaned him. Only may the Lord make good his word. So the woman stayed at home and nursed her son until she had weaned him. After he was weaned, she took the boy with her, young as he was, along with a 3-year-old bull, an ephah of flour, and a skin of wine, and brought him to the house of the Lord at Shiloh. When the bull had been sacrificed, they brought the boy to Eli. She said to him, pardon me, my Lord. As surely as you live, I am the woman who stood here beside you praying to the Lord. I prayed for this child, and the Lord has granted me what I asked of him. So now I give him to the Lord. For his whole life he will be given over to the Lord. And he worshiped the Lord there. As you continue to read this narrative, you can see that even though Hannah gave him to the Lord, she was still involved in his life. You can read where when they would go up and see him, she made a little coat for him every year. And she was still involved in his life. Let me tell you, what mama is not still involved in their children's lives? When they get grown, they leave our house, we're still involved in their lives. That doesn't stop. She was still involved. So we can all agree, we need to appreciate our mothers. We need to praise them. Thank you, moms, for your love and your care and your devotion to us. And also there's imitation. 1 Corinthians 11:1. Follow my example, or imitate my example, as I follow the example of Christ. This is Apostle Paul here talking. Paul asking people to imitate his life, his faith in Christ. You know, and we imitate people, don't we? We tend to imitate people. We tend to imitate those that we're close to. We tend to imitate our parents, our moms, our dads. We imitate folks. And that's not a bad thing unless the people you're imitating are not good people. Why do we want our children to grow up around good people? Because we want them to imitate good people, right? We don't want them to grow up around people they shouldn't be around. Bad influences. We want them to imitate good people. We learn by imitation. Sometimes we imitate the bad behavior, but we can also imitate good behavior, good traits, good graces. President Dwight Eisenhower once said, "My sainted mother taught me a devotion to God and a love of country which have ever sustained me in my many lonely and bitter moments of decision in distant and hostile lands. To her I yield a son's reverent thanks." Sounds like Dwight Eisenhower not only appreciated his mother, but he also imitated her. Yeah, today is a day of celebration of our mothers. Moms, you were created in the image of God. You are a reflection of God in your lives right now. So all week, as I've been working on our lesson today, and once again, being sensitive to moms that might on this day maybe think about their failures rather than their triumphs. Thinking about what things they could have done different. Thinking about all manner of things. Thinking of, well, maybe you have outlived a child. But a story kept coming to my mind of a mom. In 2006, when I was at Balad Air Base in Iraq, about an hour or so north of Baghdad, I was a chaplain there in the hospital. We were the only level 1 trauma center in the whole nation, and our hospital there was a set of tents, like what you would see on MASH, if you ever watch MASH, but it was a lot bigger. Like I said, a level 1 trauma center. And we were there to mainly take care of our men and women in uniform who were fighting battles. But sometimes we would get in some Iraqis who had been injured, or in this particular case I'm about to tell you about was a car crash. They brought mom in and the dad, and also brought in their infant daughter, about 6 months old, maybe 6 months at the oldest. And so I was there. They brought them in. The father was okay. He was walking around talking. The mother had several broken bones, including a pelvic bone, broken leg, broken arm, I think, and some other injuries. And we were there with her, and we had the Iraqi interpreter, so Mom is lying there in the emergency room. Dad is there, medic is there, doctor's there, I'm there, and the interpreter. And she's crying out, asking for her baby. Well, unfortunately, the baby did not survive the crash. We were there, and I was there trying to comfort her as only I could. I don't think I could do any good, to be honest with you. And so I asked the interpreter, "Would you like to see your baby?" She said yes. So the doctor and I went back to the morgue, and the baby was in a body bag and on a gurney, and he said, "All right, well, let's go on." So he grabbed the gurney, started walking out. I said, "Where are you going?" He said, "Well, I'm going to take her on out there." I said, "We're not taking her baby out to her like this. Not in a body bag." He said, "What are you going to do?" I said, "Well, first of all, I'm going to stop you from taking her out there. And I'm going to pick this baby up and carry it out there." So I reached down, and baby was still, she was in pink, baby girl. Looked like she was sleeping. She had a little blanket there next to her and a little outfit she was wearing, and I wrapped her and I held her in my arms. I said, "Okay, let's go see him." So I take her out there to the mom, and naturally she was just beside herself with grief and hurt and agony and pain. And got out there and handed her to her, talked to her through the interpreter. And then her husband started talking. And she apparently didn't care for what he was saying. So I asked the interpreter, I said, "What is he saying?" He said that the father told her, "It's okay. It was only a girl." Our medic that was there was about 6'4", 285 pounds, looked like he played middle linebacker for the Rams. I thought he was going to take the guy's head off there in our emergency room. I think about that mom. I don't know if they have any equivalent of a Mother's Day in Iraq. Maybe they do. Probably not. But I think of her pain. I think of her hurt on that day. And today, as we celebrate moms, and man, there's so many good moms here today. So many good moms that have influenced me throughout my life. I hope it's a day of rejoicing in who you are and maybe your life or other moms that you know. And give God thanks that good mamas come from God. And they imitate Him. Thank you, moms, for all that you mean to us. We ask God's richest blessings on you today. Guys, take your wives out to eat today, somewhere fancy and expensive. They'll appreciate that. Church, today, the invitation of Jesus Christ is open. It's always open. If you might have need of the Lord's invitation, if there's something in your life and in your heart you need to get right, and once again, I always encourage you, you don't have to come up here today, but if you want to talk to myself, one of the elders, or somebody else afterwards, you know, we'd love to talk to you. Life is difficult sometimes. Life hurts. There are things that happen to us that we don't have explanations for, and life just hurts, and sometimes you just need somebody to talk to. Whatever your need is today, church, we invite you to come right now while together we stand and sing for your encouragement. Will you come?